let's go ahead and get started. I know your time is precious, and thank you for carving out some time. I'm so excited about this session today. We've brought in some gentlemen here who have really done something. They are accomplished, experienced, grown companies into the hundreds of millions, and know the contracting space, know leadership, they know sales, operations, marketing, and they're going to offer their, thankfully they've offered their time, and they're going to offer you their expertise, not just in general, but also specific to the questions. When you filled out the, when you registered for this, there were a few questions, and those have been relayed on, and those are going to be addressed specifically. And the reason we wanted to do this is that it's a crazy time between COVID and the elections. There's so much unrest, so much uncertainty, that it takes a lot of wisdom these days to grow a company successfully. And that's what we're really focused on today. So this is not a sales pitch. We're not going to try to sell you any services. This is just wisdom. It is objective perspective, which is a really valuable thing. When you own a company, you are so involved with the day-to-day, it can be really hard to see things from a fresh, elevated perspective. And that's what we hope to do today. I want to just give you a quick mini intro. I'll properly introduce everyone in a few minutes, but just so you know, as a heads up, can you all see this intro screen? Yeah, okay. So obviously I'm Will. Bruce is my right-hand man. He's my COO at StructureM, he leads our marketing teams here. Hillary is an account executive also with us, bringing over 8 years of marketing and sales experience. Dave Galati, I'll introduce more later, but he's scaled multiple companies, franchises in the contracting space, a lot of C-level experience, and can speak operationally, sales, nuts and bolts to high-level leadership development. And then Jeff Prager, I'll introduce more on him later, but Jeff has grown hundreds of companies. He's owned extremely large companies and sold them. He's been a CPA for over 40 years and just brings profound experience to the game here. So really, again, I'll introduce everyone a little bit more in a moment as we go. Before we get much farther, I'm really thankful to have Scott Nidow and also, let's see, did Stephen, let me see, is Stephen the 773 number? Is that you, Stephen? Let me see if I can get you unmuted here. Maybe that's not, I'm not sure what we dropped Stephen's from James Hardy. I unmuted you, Scotty. Just wanted to introduce you, say thank you. This is partners at James Hardy, fantastic guys who are supporting contractors in so many ways. And I really thank you, Scott and Stephen, for being on today. Scott, you might know that there's a special offer you've brought today, and maybe if you take a moment to just speak to that and tell us a little bit about what's going on.
I'm actually going to let Stephen, because he's actually the one kind of run into stuff locally. Can you jump on, Steve?
Yeah, let me see. He's there's a phone in. Where is he? Oh, here we go.
I know he's muted.
Yeah, I just clicked allow to talk. Ask to unmute, it says. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so I can go real quick. So, it's a radius mail kit where basically you sell a Hardy job, and then we send a 3 or 5 round mailer before, during, after the job. It's got Starbucks gift cards for the 5 to 10 homeowners around the house. It's a couple $100 in value that we're happy to give away for free.
Awesome, love it. Really appreciate that. And at the end, Hillary is going to do a little fun drawing to give that away to one of you all that are on today. Appreciate you carving out some time. So let's kick things off. Here we are. I want to first of all introduce Bruce. Bruce Dell, as I mentioned, is our COO at StructureM. He's been managing and consulting contractors specifically on their marketing for about 8 years. And so he oversees an entire team of marketers from the strategic level down to the nuts and bolts of SEO and pay-per-click ads and all of those kinds of things. And he has even been brought into the James Hardie corporate offices to help train their regional reps, and just educate the James Hardie reps on the best practices for marketing for contractors specifically. So Bruce is going to jump in here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you, Bruce, share your screen. And Bruce is going to talk to some of the questions that you all brought up regarding lead quantity and I think lead quality. Go ahead, Bruce.
All right. Everything look good?
Yep.
Fantastic. Let me just do that. All right. That makes it easier. Well, thank you so much, Will. And good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to join you and to get to share for a couple of minutes here this morning. As Will said, value your time. And I know it's a busy time, especially as a lot of jobs are wrapping up and heading towards the holidays. And so thank you so much for taking this. When we sent out the survey for these workshops, it was really interesting to see the responses that came back. And overwhelmingly, from a marketing aspect, the biggest challenge that a lot of you contractors mentioned was regarding lead generation. And so I'm going to spend a few minutes this morning talking about lead generation and how you can increase the quantity and the quality of those leads, because that's the conundrum, right? It's getting good leads and getting lots of those good leads. And so we're gonna talk for a few minutes about getting how to get both of those, because the reality is there's no shortage of paid lead gen sites out there. Here's just a couple of them. But there's many out there that you can pay, and you can pay for leads. And so having so many of these out there, it's difficult to know what you should be doing. Should you go through to all of them, part of them? And so we're going to talk about a few of them today. And I'm well aware that a lot of these sites have contractors have a love-hate relationship with a lot of these, But the reality is, if you want to grow, and I say if you want to grow, you need a pay to play. You're going to have to do a combination, maybe not all of them, but a combination of these sites in order to generate leads. And that's what we're seeing with most of the contractors, the big contractors that we work with, James Hardie contractors, is they are participating. They are involved with a number of these sites, paying for leads and doing that well. Now, they're not dependent on those exclusively. They have a lot of leads coming in from many different sources, from organic, from referrals, but they recognize that as I said, they have to pay to play and get a lot of those leads. And as I said, not all of these are equal. You're going to have to see which ones work best for you. One of the things I always suggest to contractors is that you just do a basic search, few searches around your area, and see which of these sites are really coming up for those services that your customers are looking for. And that's where I would start. If Home Advisor is very big in your area and they're number 1, 2 up in the organic results for people, then that may be a good option for you, or Yelp or Houzz or whatever the case is. The other thing is you've got to measure the performance history of each channel. We'll talk a little bit more about that to make sure you're getting some accurate data and knowing how these are performing and making decisions on that. And then the last one you should always our question is, are these leads exclusive to you, or do they send it to a pool of people? And then it's a race to the bottom type of thing. It's based on how many, the cheapest price. So yeah, this is just some of the paid lead gen sites. Obviously, there's a lot more out there from a traditional standpoint, but for time's sake today, we're just going to focus on a few of these. But before you jump in and say, all right, let's start, signing up or doing some of these paid sites, you're going to need to know this. You're going to need to figure out for yourself, what is the maximum allowable lead cost per service that you're willing to spend? Because if you don't have an idea on what this number is, it's really a guessing game of, is that going to be producing for you? And I say per service because obviously if you do a number of different services, these are going to be different amounts. It's not just per customer. How much are you willing to pay for a siding customer, a window customer, a roofing customer, what is that customer worth to you? Or another way, as a lot of people like to put it, is what is their lifetime value? If again, you have a number of different services or there's recurring services in there, what is that lifetime value of getting that customer? Because when you know that amount, when you know that maximum amount, it helps you, as you're advertising, to see how those are doing. Obviously, we want to pay the least amount for leads. That's the goal. But knowing what the maximum is, what you're willing to pay, really does help you. But that's where you need to start. You need to have that number before you start. And then as you go into these paid channels, you need to work out what the return on investment is for each source. So for example, a source being Facebook ads. When you pay to do Facebook ads, you're going to have to do that work to say, is this paid off? Did the leads, did the sale that I got from these ads pay for these ads, pay for itself? And one of the things is the more you kind of do this and you evaluate afterwards, it takes work. It takes your team to really be able to connect the dots and close the loop to know if this is the case. Because one of the big things is when you ask customers, hey, how did you find us? Oh, I found you on Google, or even worse, I found you on the internet. What does that mean? And so it's important that in order to kind of close that loop, you're going to need to know the exact source, the exact tracking. Tracking those leads is critical to be able to know if you have a return on investment for those channels. A lot of we work with a lot of contractors, and they have multiple. They pay for a lot of these paid advertising sites, and these sites are big at telling you numbers, right? Yep, we sent. You've got X amount of leads. What does X amount of leads actually mean? If you're not able to close the loop and know who were those leads, did those leads convert to sales? How much was that sale? How much did we make on those sales? You can't actually know if that advertising ROI was a positive one or not. And so training your team to ask those questions is critical, and not just relying on what the customer says, but looking at the data from getting accurate reports and accurate tracking. One of the things that I always say about tracking, especially with call tracking, is to use a good call tracking service. We use a company called CallRail. They're one of the leaders in the industry, and they really help break down calls, what source that call came from, what channel that call came from, what website that call came from. You can record calls. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but it allows you to be able to, especially phone calls, because I think that's probably a majority of leads that still come in is through phone calls, being able to track those calls back to the source and not just rely on what the customer said. But let's get into, again, we showed a couple of different lead gen sites that are out there for contractors, but we're going to talk about a couple that we see the big value in for clients. And as I said, a lot of this is paying to play. The reality is, contractors, we suggest that you do a minimum of these three paid services: Google search ads, Google local service ads, which are different, we'll talk about, and Facebook ads, and we'll go into some of those in a minute. But let's start at Google ads. Why should you use Google ads? Again, love-hate relationship. Talk to enough contractors, and some say waste of money, other people swear by them. And so here are just 4 main reasons why contractors need to use Google ads. First of all is the results. You can get quick, instant results. It's basically very much like a light switch. If you want leads next week, you fire that up. Whereas a lot of other methods, there's a longer lead time and it takes a while to get in. So PPC or Google ads gives you those results. There's also greater control. If you're getting too many leads, which hopefully that's happening, and we have a few clients who've come back and said that, which is always great to hear. We can, dial it down, pause it, start it in a different area. The control you get to get leads in areas is great. the number three, which is something we just spoke about, was accurate tracking. You can track these for an ROI precisely. You can know exactly which leads came through your Google ads and therefore attribute a revenue dollar to them. And then probably the biggest one is it's really no longer an option. Google is reducing your choice to participate with paid ads. And here's a startling statistic, but 41% of Google clicks are going to the top results. So this is a typical search that someone would do. And the bulk of the top of the screen is now all ads. And they make it very difficult to tell what is an ad and what is not an ad now. And so a majority of clicks are going to this these top results, and will increase. That number, 41%, is going to increase as Google really sees the value. I mean, 97% of Google's revenue comes from advertising. So they are incentivized to push those non-paid options further and further down the page. And really, it's now all up to, if you want to be seen anywhere for Google searches, the paid options is where it is. The other startling statistic here is that pay-per-click visitors are 50% more likely to purchase than organic visitors. Organic is still very much seen as in the research stage. You're looking around. When people are ready to buy, when people are ready to pull the trigger, paid ads at the top, because they know that that's the result. So that's a lot higher in terms of intent than other methods. A couple of other things about paid ads. It's easy to assume that Google is the only way. Yes, the search traffic on Google is a lot higher, but there's a lot of other options. And as I said before, Facebook ads is one of them. Bing ads is another one. They have a smaller market share, but there's a lot of times there's less competition, and so there's times where you can get some good leads through Bing ads as well. And so a couple of tactics and tips I wanted to give you when you're looking at paid ads is, when it comes to search ads, which is again what I just showed at the top, it's very important that one of the features that you use, and if you're doing pay-per-click, you can put in the chat if you're participating in Google ads at some point. But one of the things to make sure you use is a location extension. So what a location extension does is it connects your Google My Business listing to Google Ads. And if you ever done a local search, you get to see that map pack. And now the first position in the map pack is very often a paid result. So if you want to be found in the map pack, because that's a lot of times where people go down because they know it's that local company who they're going to find in those, you can pay to be in that first position. So that's through a location extension. A lot of contractors miss that. We find when we take over PPC campaigns, very seldomly is this feature on, and it's an easy win in our minds. The other one is negative. I apologize. That's not native. It's negative keywords. Making sure you use negative keywords. Another big waste of money that we see is people wasting their pay-per-click on a search result for something that was not intended for them, but they may have used the word siding contractor in there, but they're looking for other things. And so using strategic negative keywords is very important. A few other quick tips, especially when it comes to Facebook ads, but now Google ads as well, is to use target audiences. When you're able to give these companies lists of clients or leads that you have, they are very good now at generating like audiences. They will target people who are very similar. A lot of times you want the same people that you have serviced time and time again. And so Google and Facebook are able to serve ads to people very similar to those people, which is a big win. The third one here is, especially when it comes to if budget is tight, but don't just blanket the area with, hey, I've got a 50-mile radius that I serve and whatever leads I get within that. If there are strategic zip codes that you want to target, That's another great big tip as well. We often find with James Hardy, when it comes to the age of a neighborhood and the demographic of a neighborhood, there's some big differences in those areas. And so strategically being able to target zip codes for James Hardy specific jobs has been a huge success for us. And then the last one here is just website retargeting. So I just want to make sure I'm keeping track of time. This should be just a fundamental that if you're not doing, it's a big missed opportunity. If you think about it, you've done all that hard work to get that visitor, to get the person to come to your website. If you don't have a digital billboard following them around for 1 or 2 weeks after, it's a missed opportunity. You want top of the mind awareness as they're shopping around. So that's another big option. Well, let's shift gears real quick and talk about some local service ads here. So local service ads are relatively new. They've been around for about a year or two, but siding was never a category that was open until a couple of months ago. And so here is a roofing example, but now siding is definitely here, and it's severely underutilized. Really, if you are, put in the chat if you're aware of local service ads or you're currently doing them. If you are, kudos to you. If you're not, it's a big missed opportunity here, because these are now at the very top of Google. And again, Google is putting a lot of time and effort into showing these ads at the top, even before paid ads. So here you can see there's a paid ad. Now these get to show at the top, and they get to show your listings. So a couple of quick pointers about local service ads. First of all, it's pay per lead. It's a big game changer. You only pay for people who actually submit information and want the service. And Google's really good about that. If it's a spam call or someone who's looking for something you don't offer, they are good with reimbursing those. So that's a big deal. And you can actually set how much you're willing to pay per lead, which again, going back to our first slide, is critical. You need to know that number so that you can bid higher. The more you bid, the more you get shown is what it's come down to. Again, these are exclusive leads. There's a qualification process to be on this list. So it really filters out the chuck in a truck who is just going around. And there's a lot of higher purchase intent we've found. People who are submitting queries in local service ads have a much higher purchase intent. They're ready to go for the most part. So better quality of leads. And the biggest difference with local service ads is the review count. If you've got good Google reviews, just jump to the next one, reviews, then that really counts. And so my advice is to make sure you have good Google reviews and a lot of them to stand up from the competition. But time and time again, we found is the number one factor that affects the number of leads is the phone. Believe it or not, it is the phone. The number of times we record all of our paid ads, phone calls, and it is a shame, a crying shame, the number of times a lead goes unanswered or to voicemail. And so the number one thing here is answer the phone. If you're paying for a lead and you're willing to pay $250 per lead, you want that lead. And so having somebody who is always available to answer the phone in person is absolutely critical. Don't let a lead go to voicemail. Very important. People do not leave messages. They've moved on to the next thing. Call back fast. They're waiting. So if they do submit a form or they do leave a voicemail, calling them back fast greatly increases your chance that you'll get that lead. And then train to convert to a consultation. Having someone who answers the phone, who has a script, who knows what to say to be able to book that consultation and qualify that lead is so important. Again, it's scary when we listen to calls later on, who's answering the phone, and it's almost like they don't want the business. You're doing them a favor. And so training that person is critical. But using a good service, if you don't have a team, answering service is very important here. We use a company a lot of times called West Park Communications. They have trained agents. They train their team, and you can give them a script and they know what to say to qualify leads and send you those leads. And then the last one is to track and record your calls so you know where those calls came from. And they use dynamic call swapping is the technical term, but they use that to be able to track where that source of that call came from, and you can record your calls, which is going to be surprising when you listen back about how that's going. A couple of other real quick things. How am I doing on time, Will? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and wrap it up ASAP.
All right. So the last thing I wanted to kind of really talk about is some free ways to get more leads. And that is fairly obvious, but again, kind of scary when we talk to contractors, the amount of people who are not doing this. And it's mine your existing leads and customers. Again, such a big opportunity. Reach out to those people who've already submitted information, but never pulled the trigger, never kind of sold. They dropped off, they got cold. And then your existing customers. And here's just 2 real quick ways to do that. Re-engaging with leads that went cold or never sold, and cross-selling to existing customers. If you offer different services, multiple services, having, especially having a project manager as you're doing a siding job, take a look at the condition of the windows, take a look at the condition of the roofing, and record that so you can follow up and have that conversation later. But sending them qualified emails that really give them helpful and valuable information, special offers, incorporating video, but just re-engaging with them and mining those existing leads is important. And my advice here is to keep reaching out until they tell you to stop. And so, yeah, very, very important. My last thing to wrap up is definitely how to get more of the customers you want. That's another thing about the quality of leads. And so you say, hey, I don't mind. We got lots of leads. It's just like the kind of leads that we get. My big thing is to differentiate yourself from the crowd. We have a free giveaway that we're going to give out. So we did a webinar a little while ago for a free guide that really walks you how to differentiate yourself from the competition, how to stand out. Because the reality is most contractors sound like everybody else. It's, we're BBB accredited. We've been in business for 20 years. We're the best in the city. Everyone says that. We have quality products. Everyone says that. And so how do you actually differentiate yourself so that when people are shopping around, you stand out, you stand out as memorable? And so we'll send you that guide. Yeah, so we'll send everyone on this call a guide, and you'll be able to kind of create your unique value and incorporate that then in your scripts and your phone calls, in your emails, and your website, so that message is resonating and standing out. So, well, thank you so much. I know I appreciate that. I went through quite a lot in a few minutes, but hopefully that was helpful. Wanted to open up if there were any questions.
Bruce, yeah, they've got a couple of great questions in chat. First, I want to hit, Steven's asked, specifically with local service ads, those are a no-brainer, right? Now that they've opened up the category of siding, it's just such an easy win. Yeah, you can stop screen sharing if you want.
Okay.
But with local service ads, what's a realistic budget? How much should contractors be, if they're doing it, or if they can do it, how much money, let's say per month, should they be spending on local service ads specifically?
Again, it comes down to how much you're willing to pay per lead, because Google changed about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, to a bidding option. It used to be very standard, everyone paid and it rotated through, and Google got smart and realized we can make a lot more money here if we just let people bid. So if you're willing to pay $100, $200 for a lead, and again, these are qualified leads, these are high intent leads, I would bid to make sure you're shown more. The more you're willing to bid, the more you're going to be shown in position number 1 or in those three like I showed you. And right now, competition's fairly low. You'll probably always be up there. But as this gets out there and grows, what happens is, you have to click on another link to see more than 3 views, and no one really does that. So you really want to be found in those top 3 more and more.
Bruce, didn't you do a search recently in Kansas City? And how many other companies are doing siding contractor local service ads?
Yeah, we found one
Okay.
other siding contractor right now in Kansas City is doing local service ads. So they're probably paying, because they don't have to bid very much because there's nobody else. They're probably paying maybe $20, $30 a lead is what I would estimate. For a siding lead, you would take that all day long
And yeah,
and all night long.
They're qualified. So if you're not doing that right now, you need to start ASAP, because that's wide open and a big opportunity. As more and more people start to find out about it, they're going to drive the cost up. So highly recommend.
And as I said, there's a qualification process. So there's a little bit of work. You have to submit your business license. You have to be insured, a few things like that. And you have to have a background check for the business owner as well. But once you get through those hurdles for a week or two, you're good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bruce. Dave, I want to segue into Dave here, because Tanya asked a really fantastic question, and I feel like it's maybe more on the sales side of things. And so I want to introduce Bruce. Fantastic. If you have more questions, by the way, we're not trying to shut things down. We just want to be respectful of time and move things along quickly. We want to get to Dave, want to get to Jeff as well. And so if you have questions, you have our email address. Happy to hop on a call with you individually and answer questions. But I want to jump into Dave's session here. Dave is specializes in sales and operations and leadership development. He's been in the home improvement industry for over 2 decades. Has a ton of experience at the C-level. In marketing, as I said, sales operations, including he's led a company to $30 million in the home improvement sector, scaled that company 350% over 4 years in his leadership. And he's helped literally hundreds of home improvement companies grow, and has a really specific proprietary kind of a coaching model where he does that. And so, Dave, thank you for jumping on today. I'm going to share my screen, Dave, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be
Got
great.
your slides up.
Yep.
And
my slides are not as fancy as the marketing guy's slides. So the sales and op, we just tend to get right to it. And so one of the things that came up, and I see this a lot with home improvement contracts. So let's assume leads aren't a problem. Got more leads you can handle. We got plenty of leads. We built a great reputation. Obviously, I work with lots of quality home improvement contractors. I think that the common theme that unites kind of StructureM, Emerscale, and Jeff's organization, it's all about quality. We want to work with good people, quality people that are out to do more than just transact in the marketplace, but leave a legacy and build a business that will last. And some of the things around sales is it's not that you necessarily can't find good salespeople, although that can be a challenge too. It's really how do you bring them on board, and how do you properly train them, right? And so there's several aspects to this, and I'm trying to, this is something that I could do in a 2-hour seminar. I'm trying to break down into about 10 minutes. So I'm going to fly very high level over each one of these bullets to make sure that you understand some of the importance of this. So the first thing is methodology, right? You've got to have a methodology of your sales program. Now, look, there's lots of things out there. I've done 10 steps to a sale, 8 steps to a sale. There's various programs that you can work in. I've helped formulate some of these over the years. There's some really good systems and processes around selling. But basically, say if we looked at an 8-step process, we'd say, the first step is to confirm the appointment, right? When you arrive, you do a warm-up, you build rapport. That's kind of step 1 of the process, right? Then you do some form of interview with the customer, right? Where you're basically creating an environment where you're asking questions, consultative style, right? Then you do some form of inspection. Whatever business you're in, whatever service you're providing, you're doing some form of inspection. Then you're presenting, you're making a formal presentation, whether that's at the table using a computer, sell sheets, various samples, all of that, interactive, present to the client. Then there's a closing process. I like to use a phrase called the closing trail, right? You're going to go down this road with them, and you're going to have to ask for the order multiple times, right? Then there's the proposal process, right? So that you're kind of trial close, trial close, trial close. Here's a proposal. There's a review process, the actual closing of the business. And then there's a follow-up process. And, actually, if you don't close at the table, one call close, there's a follow-up process. So part of this is in this very high level, and there's also all sorts of things that will help you along that, but you've got to have a training methodology. It can't be, hey, here's the price book, there's the samples, here's a shirt, make sure you cut your nails and you show up on time and sober, and good luck, right? That's what happens in a lot of home improvement, especially if you're hiring people that are experienced. You're expecting, well, if I'm hiring them and they're experienced, then I shouldn't really have to train them. That's not the case. You need to train them. So if you don't have a process and a methodology for training, you've got to do that. And so generally speaking, you have the steps process. And then my best practice is you don't let anybody run leads for a minimum of 2 weeks. And what I mean by that is they're going to literally get into a culture where they're going to learn the processes, and then we're going to create a culture of role playing. All right. Role playing has to be in the DNA of the company. And if, as the owner or sales manager or general manager, if you're not comfortable doing impromptu role playing, talking about Mrs. Jones and Mr. Smith, and really engaging in the process with your salespeople, you'll never get them to the level they need to do. So a culture of role playing is also, it's not like when someone breaks down a call, hey, how'd it go? Well, it went well. They almost bought. No. What happened? Well, she said, okay. So let's step into that. Mr. Jones, I understand how you feel. A lot of folks feel that way. What we found is, right, you get in, you start doing sales training, right? Feel, felt, found, thermometers, all of these different things, but you role play them, right? And so if you're not actively role playing with your sales team, whether they're experienced or not, you're not going to get the maximum effect from them. And don't let them off the hook. Here's one thing to be true, and everybody on this call that's role played knows this. It's 100 times harder to role play with your peers than it is to actually do it in front of the customer, right? So if you can do it in front of, all the peers, all your peers, your boss, your subordinate, whatever it is, you can do it in front of the customer. So it's practice. And then that builds the next level, which is consistency. So a lot of times what happens is leadership around sales, it ebbs and flows, right? Hey, we have good sales months, we have bad sales months, we have good sales months. And so when it's good, you tend to back off, right? Oh, we'll let them ride, we'll let them go. When it's bad, then you tend to rush in, where are all the sales? Rather than a level of consistency. So whether it's a record sales month or the worst sales months ever, the training needs to be consistent. You still need to have sales meetings. You still need to do role playing. You still need to hold them accountable to the methodology and the process. And you can't get lazy. You can't get complacent. It's very easy to do that. I've seen that. It's the number one thing I see with sales and home improvement. It's not that they don't know how to do it. It's consistency and building that up. And then the other piece is inspecting what you expect. I think the challenge is, especially most home improvement contractors, whether they're W-2 or even subcontractors, if it's commission only or draw against commission, there's no real salary involved. It's very easy to feel like you just take it easy. Yeah, they're sales guys. We can't get in. We can't get into their business. Just let them go. They'll get upset if we try to do it. No, you need to inspect what you expect, and part of that is you need to hold salespeople accountable, not just to results, not just to, hey, we measure you because you generate this amount of revenue, but you need to hold them to actual productivity. And one of the things that a lot of folks don't measure is actually what's called ADL, average dollar per lead. The average dollar per lead is actually a function of two things, very simple. It's a function of the closing percentage of the salesperson, what percent of the actual leads they run, the sits that they close, and then times the average sale that they sell. And so the average dollar per lead is really the key metric that you want to inspect with your salespeople. You could, so let's put it this way. If you had a sales guy that ran 10 leads in a week, 10 sits, and generated $20,000 in revenue, okay, let's just say that's what he did. Then you have another salesperson, okay, that ran 5 leads and generated $15,000 in revenue, okay? Which salesperson would you rather have? Well, you'd rather have the guy that ran 5 leads and generated 15. Even though the guy won the week and generated 20,000 in sales, you want the guy that actually generates more with every lead that they get. And that's a function of how good they close and how much they sell. That's the KPI that you need to be measuring. And so that's what you need to be inspecting. And if those are, and you need to establish baselines on what that is. And if you're not doing that, that's when you're going to run into scenarios. So it's very easy to let salespeople slide because, hey, they're just working on commission, or hey, they're doing all right, and we're making money and all that. You can't do that. You've got to have an intentionality. And then there's ways to train around ADL, right? And so if they close at a low rate, why are they closing at a low rate? If they can't sell the bigger jobs, why are they not selling the bigger jobs? Someone told me early in my career in sales, you can never sell what you don't present, right? So if you go in and you're a roofer and it's just a little leak in the corner, and okay, maybe that's an option to repair. Certainly want to present that, but you're never going to sell a re-roof unless you present a re-roof, right? And the same can hold true with any home improvement industry. And so it's always about making sure you give the customer what they want, need, but at the same time, sometimes they don't understand that until you explain it to them. And so that's basically the methodology around training, is that you want to make sure you want to make sure you have methodology, culture of role playing, consistency, and inspecting what you expect. Any questions on that? No? Everybody had a question about marketing, but no one has a question about sales? All right, it's all good. I'm sure it's like preaching to the choir a little bit. But the question that we got in the forum was, okay, you know what to do, but are you doing it, right? So ultimately, my encouragement to you is, if you know what to do and you're not doing it, and you just got to do it, right? Okay. The next thing is I had the questions there. Somebody was talking about production and inventory and organization, right? And so one of the things that I know to be true that affects profitability the most in a home improvement organization is improper inventory management, because your material costs have to be tight and right, or it's the biggest point of leakage that you can have in your organization. So you can have productive workers, you can have, selling at a good margin, you can have all your internal costs separated, but if you're not managing your material costs in an effective way, you will leak profits, and you'll look at the end of the month, where did all the money go? And so part of this is you need to, again, have an inventory management program. I mean, you need to be able to know what you have ordered in, what the cost per unit of those things is, how much you have on stock, real time, and you need to understand that, and you need to be able to understand when just-in-time inventory is good for you, meaning you're going to order what you need as you need it, then you manage your cash flow that way. Or in certain scenarios where bulk volume and bulk buying gives you significant per unit discounts that gives you a good ROI to do that, then those are the things you want to consider, right? So you got to consider that balancing between cash flow and actually minimizing the actual net effect of your materials costs, all right? So that's that piece. The other piece is you have to have a check-in and check-out process. You can't allow your production teams to just grab stuff off the shelf, load it in the truck as they need to, if they need to, or run over to Home Depot anytime they want, just throw stuff on the card. You can't do it. You can't do it. You have to have check-in and check-out procedures. You have to have an accountability. You have to understand the distinction between what's on the shelf in the warehouse versus what's on the truck in the back of the thing. And the employees need to understand that a part of their job in the morning and at the end of the day is to make sure those things reconcile. And if you don't have good leadership in that role, then you need to check your leadership, because this is not a popularity contest. This is we're running a business and we need to be profitable contest. And that's how we win. And so you need to have the systems and processes in place, and you need to have a level of accountability, which equals profitability on that end of the scenario. All right. I've worked with clients that swear they don't have a production problem. We don't have an inventory issue, we don't have a problem. And then we do a little deep dig and we realize that, $1,500 a week is walking out the back door. And hey, guess what? Ooh, that one foreman that you thought was a rock star, well, he's doing side work, right? These things happen all the time. And so unless you, again, back to what I said earlier, inspect what you inspect and have systems and processes where you can actually measure that, then you run the risk of that stuff happening. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, man, he would never do that to me, or she would never do that to me. Well, they do. People do. And that's just the world we live in. Do we want to give the benefit of the doubt? Yes. Do we not want to, we don't want to be, paranoid every day? No. But if we have these things, we can sleep well at night knowing that they aren't. But it's on us. It's not on them. If we leave the door open and the opportunity for them to do it, people will take that opportunity. And that's just the nature of the beast. All right. Did we get a question there? That's true. Yeah. So Stephen, it is a big part is knowing what stock that you're supplying. Now, obviously we're talking about normal times. We know COVID has created a lot of different supplier disruptions in various home improvement products, right? Lumber. I know windows are getting hammered, windows and doors. I'm not 100% sure on roofing. I think there's a little bit more availability there, but still probably some product supply chain issues. But yeah, that's the biggest piece is being proactive and understanding in advance so that if you're getting directly from a supplier versus a truckload direct from a manufacturer, you understand what that looks like. Yeah, so that's good. Siding is good, and I know talking with some James Hardy folks is they've been really on top of it as far as staying on top of the supply curve, and they've been out in front of it, and lead times have been good. I know in the window and door business, it's 18, 20 weeks right now. I mean, they're almost booking into Q2 next year. And, because with windows, right, you need all 8 pieces. If 7 come and you're missing one, you can't throw the window together. So obviously those kinds of things. But yeah, so I think it's really, it's not glamorous. Inventory management, it's not glamorous, but it's essential. And you could be doing every other thing right in your business, but if you're not controlling your costs on the back end from a materials perspective, it will kill your profitability over time. Yep. Yeah, that's true, Tanya. Good feedback. All right, that's all I got. I appreciate everybody's time, and hopefully this was helpful as it can be in a 15-minute flyover. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve you. I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season and a strong end of the year, and 2021 is good for you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. If you do have a quick question, pop it in the chat. Be happy to I know Dave has to hop off here at the bottom of the hour. But if you have a question, pop it in chat and we can get to that. We'll go ahead and do that now. But thank you, Dave. Yeah, and a big shout out to Hardy has been keeping the factories running like 24/7. So they are one of the many, the small percentage of those who are actually staying up with demand right now, which is pretty fantastic. That's a hard balance to keep as a contractor because you don't want to hate on the manufacturers in front of the clients, in front of the customers, right? Because you sold them their product, so you got to support it. But when it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to get in what you promised, it puts you in a tough spot. So that's definitely a real thing. Well, I don't see any other questions popping in here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I want to introduce Mr. Jeff Prager. Let me get my stop share on here. Let's see if that works. Great. So I'm going to have Jeff share in a moment. Jeff, I'll just introduce, as I mentioned, he's been a CPA for over 40 years. So he gets all of the confusing numbers stuff. He also is an author, a speaker, a lifelong entrepreneur. He's not just a bean counter. He's been the CFO or CEO of several successful multi-million-dollar companies. He's one of the founders of Ashworth Golf Clothing, which is pretty funny. I think very interesting. He is the CFO and partner of a large land development company. He was the owner of Strauss Homes, which was once rated the second largest privately owned home builder company in Colorado and one of the top 100 privately owned companies in Colorado. So Jeff also is a professor at a college in Denver, just has done so much. And so I'm so thrilled to have Jeff on the call. Jeff, welcome. Thank you. And go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
So I just want to say one thing about my background, if you will, is what I learned when I started running my own businesses, which was many years ago. I realized that what I learned as a CPA would actually bankrupt my business. And so I had to take a whole new approach to it. And I'm going to share some of that with you today. So it's something to look forward to, okay? But I'm going to start by answering some of the questions that came out in the survey. So the survey had 4 major questions. And before I get through each question, I'll address each one of them. But one was, why am I working harder and making less money? I wonder if any of you are experiencing that. The second one was, how do I have money in the bank when I need it? Okay, the lack of money. The third question was dealing with collections. And the fourth one was losing customers because of backlog. And I hope to give you a very interesting spin on that. So I'm going to get started right now. So in terms of working harder and not getting enough money. So in the construction business, specifically what we do, contracting, there are three big challenges. And let me go through each of the three individually. The first is, I don't have enough money in the bank, and I know I should have enough. There just never seems to be enough money. In reality, you're facing one of two problems. One is not enough profit, but don't confuse profit with cash flow. So you may have a problem with either profitability, which could be pricing and or the way you provide your service, or cash flow, how you're managing the company as a whole. But the challenge is to isolate the problem and fix it, and figure out what your next steps are for the next 30, 60, 90 days. The second challenge is you're not a financial expert, and God willing, you don't want to be one. Okay? We are a weird breed of cat, and financial reports are confusing. And they don't tell you the whole story. Plus, and call it like it is, your CPA, your accountant, your bookkeeper, they deal in the past. They're not getting paid to help you improve your profit or your cash flow. And most business owners need a bridge between accounting information and taking action. And the third thing is you might be in a catch-22 situation. Here's what I mean. To grow your business, you need more money. But to get more money, you need to grow. So it's a catch-22. And the natural way out is by working harder, doing more yourself, longer hours. But when you solve the cash flow problem, it's easy to solve the other problems as well. So there's a reason your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror. Where you're headed, where we're going, is far more important than what you left behind. And that's where people in the accounting profession leave business owners in a bad bind. Okay? So a good CFO helps you look at your whole business funnel, not just silos like marketing, sales, production, management. They're looking at everything. Now, why did I say initially that you're losing? If I ran my business like an accountant, I'd go bankrupt. Well, think about this. Here are what I found to be this 8 key drivers in a business. Now, Will is great at this, and Dave, these are the guys, all right? But number 1 is your number of leads. Number 2 is your sales conversion rate. How many of those leads are not only quantity, but quality of leads? Will brought that up earlier. Sales conversion. Are you getting them? Customer retention. Do you have a way of getting back to your customers over and over? Like I was a home builder. Nobody would expect that anybody would buy more than one house per year, especially in the first-time buyer, first-time move-up market, which is what we were in. But we found a certain demographic that after 3 years, we'd send a salesperson over to their home with a bouquet of flowers or candy or a basket of fruit, something, and say, hey, we want to thank you for living in a Strauss community for the last 3 years. And then we'd start a conversation. By the way, when you bought this home, you were doing this, your spouse was doing this, you had this many children. Has anything changed? Now, we could sell on average 3 to 5 extra homes a year just on a box of candy or a bouquet of flowers. The average commission to a realtor was $15,000. Would $15,000 times 3 to 5 sales buy a nice dinner? The answer is, I hope so. So customer retention rate, look at it outside of the normal box. Number of transactions per customer. Are you upselling them, downselling them, doing other things to create velocity? And average price per transaction. Are you pricing your product and service correctly? By the way, that's a major problem in this industry. So those first 5 are not on your financial statements anywhere. And that's what makes up the biggest number in your profit and loss statement, your P&L, which is revenue. But you don't go after revenue, you go after these 5 metrics. Then, how much does it cost you to produce your goods or services? That gives you gross profit. That's variable cost. We don't have to get technical. Then net profit, then cash flow. Cash flow and profit are not the same. Question 2, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. Question 2, how do I get the cash I need when I need it? This is an extremely important question. So there are only 2 ways to raise money, and I like to simplify everything into common sense. You could do it internally, which is the best way to raise money. You've got good operations, good sales, good management. Boom, you're running your business, sipping a pina colada on a beach in Puerto Rico or the Cancun or whatever it may be. And externally is borrowing money. External is a good short-term solution, a bad long-term solution. Let's talk about internally. Over the long term, you must make your money through operations. Now, here's the disconnect between accounting and the way we think as business owners. We think as business owners of cash coming in, cash going out, period. End of conversation. Cash comes in from selling our stuff, borrowing money, or getting equity, investors to come in. Usually we end up being our own investor. It goes out for labor's material, overhead, subcontractors, buying more assets and paying dividends or paying back debt. Money comes in faster than it goes out for you to make more money. However, see that dotted line? Anything coming in and going out on the left side of the dotted line is on your profit and loss. And on your right side is on your balance sheet. So they're not even designed for you. They don't think the way you think. So that's the biggest fallacy of accounting. That's for investors and bankers. Let me show you an example. So let's say you're an S corp or sole proprietorship, or anything. But here's your profit, $30,000. You got to pay taxes, which isn't usually on your financial statement. So of the $30,000, you've pocketed 18. By the way, I hope your salary is up here. Now, you don't collect all your receivables. So your accounts receivable increased, and an increase in the amount of money your customers owe you. It's money you didn't collect. So of your $30,000 profit, you're now negative $23,000 approximately. Now take it the next step. You're paying debt. You still made $30,000, but your bank account is almost $33,000 left, worse off than at the beginning of the year. That's a $60,000 swing. $60,000 between what your accountant is telling you and what's in your bank. By now, you should be getting worried. Okay? So now we got to make up for that loss. Now, there's 2 ways to make up for it. You either put the money in or you borrow it. But your banker sees your business differently than you do. They're looking for low risk, sustainable profits, a cushion of cash so that you could withstand seasonal fluctuations, and they want to make sure their capital is being used productively. So there are 5 C's of banking, and I'm going to run. Will, how much time do I have left?
Yep, you're good.
Good.
We're up at the bottom of the hour. So yeah, in the next 10 minutes or so, we should be good.
Perfect. Okay. So to borrow money, they look at 5 different characteristics of your business. And I actually have met with a banker who showed me on a spreadsheet how they rate their customers based on these 5 characteristics. One is your character. Are you committed? Do you have the experience, the integrity? One of the questions that came up with is, what do I do when I have 2 years under my belt, but they don't lend unless you have 3? I'll answer that in a few minutes. Capacity. Do you have sufficient cash flow to service the debt and service your company? Third is capital, your net worth. Okay. Fourth is collateral. What security are you going to give them for the loan? And fifth is the conditions, the economic conditions. What are the trends in your industry? Where's it going? But here's something I learned many years ago, because in building my home building company and my land development company, I have personally borrowed over $200 million. That's a lot of money. And I never lost any sleep because I knew I was using it as an investment. But the key to getting money is to ask for it before you need it. There's an old joke about bankers, okay? They want to lend you an umbrella, but as soon as it starts to rain, they want it back. So you've got to get the money in place before you need it. So that 2-year-old company, you should be grooming your bankers now, not when you need it. Collections. Let's talk about that for a minute. Before you read the writing, I'll go through it, but don't start reading it yet. Here's the idea. The idea is that it's a lot easier to collect money when your clients are waiting for your service and a lot more difficult to get the check once you've already completed the project. So how do you get this in your favor? So this is something I've come up with. It doesn't work for everybody, but it's a great idea. You need to stay ahead of your costs. So with my contractors, we look at when the costs come in and we try to get as much upfront as possible for materials, for labor, but we want to stay ahead of the game. Get your progress payments or draws before you start the phase instead of when you complete it. Fourth, collect on change orders at the time you sign it. Fifth, take that last draw and break it into 2 different progress payments. One on substantial completion, so all your costs are covered and you have a little profit. And then on completion of the punch list, because they will hold you up and blackmail you to getting services for free so you could get that final check. They are in command instead of you being in command. And I learned this as being a builder, not by being an accountant. Okay? The last thing, close out your jobs quickly. Matter of fact, I have a meeting in a couple of hours with a solar installer. His biggest problem in collections is he hasn't completed the last couple of things of work. So we're putting a system in place so that he could get that work done quickly. Close out that job. They don't give them excuses not to pay you. And if they're cranking your chain, make sure that you did this, get substantial completion money so that you could tell them, I don't need your money bad enough. You want to hold the ace, not them. Cash flow planning is the solution to poor cash flow. The last question, large backlog. Most of you in this environment should have a large backlog. And what you're doing is you're chasing more jobs. And the backlog is getting worse. And then you're putting them off and it reflects on your reputation. So I'm going to give you a totally different concept right now. Suppose right now your break even is 600 grand. I hope that in your cost is your sales, your salary. So you have to do with 20% gross margin, your break even point is 600 grand. So I run into this argument all the time. Well, I don't want to give up my sales. I don't want to give up my sales. I've got this backlog, but my backlog is going away. Now, if you increase your gross profit to 30%, get less sales, you only have to do $400,000 of work instead of $600,000. And you're making the same money. Less work, more money. How many times have you guys told me that? You want to work less, make more. Well, it deals with your pricing and your ability to service that client. So instead of trying to get more business, try to get more net money in your bank account from each sale you get. Does that make sense? Because you can't service more people. I see people that get subcontractors to help them out, and they do crappy work. And then your warranty work costs you more than you could possibly have made. Make more profit, make more cash, work less, get the business working for you instead of you working for the business. How's that for a way to end? So your business is hungry. It needs money to operate. Your job is simply make more money. And at Cash Flow Engineering, we have only one objective: to help you make more money, period. And if you'd like to schedule a call with me, you could go to thecfoproject.com, right fit. So I'll open it up for questions. I can't see the chat because I'm in presentation mode. So we'll hopefully.
Love it, Jeff. And you got to love this guy. Jeff has such a passion for this and for small businesses and owners to make more money, because it really is the path to better service, better quality, more sustainability. So if you have questions, Jeff covered a lot. Pop it in the chat and I'll read it aloud to Jeff. As you said there's also a link you can type in if you want to talk with him offline. And while I'm waiting for questions, I will just say, a big part of this is being reminded of what you already know. It's not necessarily, brand new concepts all the time that are going to help you win in business. It's just constantly being reminded of what you already know, being encouraged to do what you know. And I think a lot of the content today has been around that, just being reminded. And again, I love Jeff and what he presented here. Are there any questions in the chat? I don't see anything. Jeff must have done just a fantastic job.
Well,
nobody cares.
There was one from earlier. Oh, it looks like we just got some. There was one from earlier from Tanya. I wanted to make sure we touched on this. She said, how do you deal with potential customers when you call and they have had 30 calls in 30 seconds and are frustrated and don't want to talk to you?
So like a lead has been given to 3 contractors. That's pretty common with some. So maybe Jeff, do you want to speak to that? The question, do you understand the question?
Ask it again, please.
There are some companies out there that sell leads to multiple contractors. And so a homeowner goes to like Thumbtack, they fill out a form, and now all of a sudden 5 contractors are calling them back in sequence all of a sudden. And the homeowner's frustrated because they thought they just filled out one form and now they're getting bombarded. Is there a strategy for a good contractor to be able to kind of sift through all of that and handle a homeowner who's irritated by that process?
I know that one of my painting companies deals with that all the time. And what we started doing is looking at the conversion rate by each of these services and measuring that, and also the profitability of the jobs. And we we're able to substantially decrease our marketing budget and increase our profitability and volume by focusing on the couple that actually produce the best results. That's one strategy. In terms of the sales call, I'd leave that to David and Will. You know, how do you overcome that objection?
Yeah, I think it's Scotty. The two things I would say is, and I have an echo, so if you guys do, I apologize. A big part of it's speed to lead. So if you use Home Advisor, the reality is if you're not getting back to the homeowner in 10 minutes, somebody else will. And I definitely feel for you paid for the lead and now the homeowner is kind of pushing back. What I would stress is, you know, I think Will talked about having, or no, maybe it was Bruce talked about a phone script. I think you got to have the same thing to overcome tough homeowners. Like, what's your identity? Why are you the right contractor to solve their needs? But I think you got to realize it's a numbers game. If you're going to Thumbtack or Home Advisor, I know a lot of contractors that don't love them, but when they run the math that Jeff talked about, it's still profitable. So even though every fifth lead they can't get to, it's cheap enough where they do okay.
You know, one thing you might consider as well is just acknowledging the reality. Just call it out as the contractor and say, look, I know you've probably gotten 3 other calls, and just put it out. And that can be frustrating. And I'd love to help you just make this process as quick and easy as possible. And anyways, just kind of call it out because it's there.
I see a question in the chat from Sean. I really enjoyed, thank you, Sean, for saying that. How do you overcome being a business that is 2 years old where the bank is requiring you to be 3? Number one, you should be grooming your bankers, like I said. But number 2 is you're at the wrong bank. So what I found when I was really small and bankers weren't chasing me for my business, that I went to multiple banks, but I went to the smaller banks, the community banks, not Wells Fargo, not Chase. They don't really have an interest in people like us. So your community banks and believe it or not, your credit unions are good places, and ask them the question point blank. Do you specialize in lending to contractors and or small businesses? If their answer is no, don't try to train them to work with you. Go to the next bank. Sort of like dating. I mean, it is exactly, matter of fact, it's more intimate. People would rather talk about dating than money. And I could even get more specific and vulgar than that. Okay? But it's dating. Not every banker is the right banker for you. In fact, most of them aren't. In fact, you're looking for the one good banker. So if your bank says, I won't lend to people under 3 years, then move your accounts to a bank that does care about your business. And that's the simplest answer I could get. Now, there are alternative sources of funding: private equity, equipment lending, factoring on your receivables, stuff like that. But that's very expensive money. The reason banks are so conservative is that they're the cheapest form of money. But there are alternatives. And if you get really desperate, go to the 3 F's: friends, family, and fools. But that's a dangerous game. Did that answer your question, Sean? I hope it did.
Jeff, what do you mean when you say grooming the banker? What is that? What do you mean by that?
What I used to do, I used to have it right here on my bookshelf to show people. I used to come in with a 3-ring binder in the olden days, tabbed, saying, here's an executive summary, a business plan. I'd have a business plan hitting on the 8 key areas of my business, which is beyond this webinar. I just have 1 to 2 paragraphs because people don't read. And then I'd fill it with fluff, like pictures of my projects, my customer list, my, in my case, blueprints. But I'd have it so it was this thick with information. And I literally remember when I was just starting out, I went into a banker and I was showing them this, and the president of the bank, the owner of the bank, walks in. He literally thumbs through the notebook and tells the senior VP of lending, give him all he wants. And I got the money I needed to start my company. Believe it or not, it's perception versus reality. So that's what I mean by grooming your banker. Don't go in hat in hand, have a projection. That was key, a financial projection. Have a little business plan. Everybody thinks a business plan has to be big. Bull. If it's more than 10 pages, you wasted your time. In fact, you could get down to 1 or 2 pages, and that would be perfect. I just worked with a client borrowing $32 million, and we did it with 2 slides. 2 slides. All they want is confidence that you know what you're doing. Now remember, I was at the back end too, where I've been upside down in my businesses. And that's where I learned accounting will get me in more trouble than it solves. And that's why we take a whole different approach in working with our clients.
That's super helpful. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wind things down. Jeff, thank you so much, and all of you that are on the call, thank you. We'll send out a follow-up email with information. I think Bruce had a brand differentiation guide for you. Well, we'll send a link to Jeff, send a link to Dave, and again, thank you so much.